Most people who wake between 2 and 4 in the morning and cannot immediately return to sleep describe the same experience. A restlessness that is not exactly anxious and not exactly uncomfortable. More like a quiet activation of the body that does not feel like waking and does not feel like sleep. They lie there, sometimes for 30 minutes, sometimes for 2 hours, and the morning that follows carries a specific kind of tiredness that is different from simply not having slept enough. A cognitive flatness and physical heaviness that 8 hours of sleep does not fully explain. In many adults over 50, this pattern has a specific physiological cause that is almost never discussed at routine medical appointments. Overnight blood glucose instability, producing a cortisol release that lightens sleep and sometimes fully wakes the person in the small hours. Understanding this mechanism and why a specific bedtime snack can directly address it changes a frustrating sleep pattern from an inexplicable feature of aging into a correctable response to a specific biological input. Before anything else, what I share here is educational information only. It is not medical advice. Nighttime waking has many causes, some of which require medical evaluation, and if you are experiencing significant sleep disruption, please discuss it with your healthcare provider. I am Dr. Andrew Carter, and I have spent 15 years working exclusively with adults over 60. Subscribe to this channel now because every week I bring you specific, grounded information about what your body needs after 50. And this video addresses one of the most common and most correctable nighttime sleep disruptors in this age group. The overnight blood glucose pattern in adults over 50 with any degree of insulin resistance is different from that of younger adults in a specific and clinically important way. In a metabolically healthy younger adult, blood glucose falls modestly in the overnight fast and is maintained in a stable range by a controlled and gradual release of glucose from the liver, driven by glucagon and the natural overnight cortisol rhythm. The person sleeps through without interruption, and glucose is stable throughout. In an adult over 50 with insulin resistance or prediabetes, the overnight pattern can be less stable. The liver's glucose output in the early morning hours, driven by the cortisol rise that begins approximately 2 to 4 hours before waking, can produce a more abrupt glucose rise that activates alerting systems before the intended wake time. Conversely, some adults with insulin resistance experience a relative glucose dip in the mid-sleep period that triggers a stress hormone release, specifically cortisol and adrenaline, as the body's glucose defense mechanism activates. These stress hormones are alerting hormones. Their release in the middle of the night produces the inexplicable activation that prevents return to sleep. The bedtime snack strategy is specifically aimed at providing a slow, sustained glucose source that reduces the amplitude of the overnight glucose swing and therefore reduces the probability of the cortisol and adrenaline response that interrupts sleep. The ideal bedtime snack for this purpose is one that is low glycemic, meaning it produces a slow and gradual glucose release rather than a spike, and that contains protein and fat to further slow the gastric emptying that determines how quickly the glucose appears in the blood. Peanut butter fits these requirements specifically well, and its particular nutrient profile addresses several of the overnight physiology changes of aging simultaneously. The glycemic index of peanut butter is approximately 14, one of the lowest of any commonly consumed food, reflecting its low carbohydrate content and the slowing effect of its high fat content on gastric emptying. 2 tablespoons of natural peanut butter contain approximately 8 grams of protein, 16 grams of predominantly monounsaturated fat, and 6 grams of carbohydrate, of which 2 are fiber. This macronutrient combination produces a very slow and sustained glucose release from the small carbohydrate content, maintaining the overnight blood glucose floor without any spike that would itself require an insulin response. The protein content is specifically relevant to the overnight muscle repair context. During sleep, the body performs the majority of its skeletal muscle protein synthesis, driven by the growth hormone release that peaks in the first 90 minutes of sleep, and by the anabolic signaling that follows the day's physical activity. Protein synthesis requires a supply of essential amino acids from the blood, and the overnight fast progressively depletes this supply. Consuming protein before bed has been shown in multiple studies to extend the availability of essential amino acids through the overnight hours, supporting muscle protein synthesis specifically in the period when the body is trying to perform it. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition from the Maastricht Group found that consuming 40 grams of casein protein before sleep significantly improved overnight muscle protein synthesis rates compared to placebo in resistance-trained adults. While this study used casein rather than peanut butter protein, the principle of pre-sleep protein extending overnight amino acid availability applies to any complete protein source consumed before sleep. Peanut butter provides this protein at a modest dose, alongside the fat and fiber that slow its digestion, producing a more sustained amino acid release than a faster digesting protein source would. Type in the comments right now whether you have tried any specific bedtime strategy for your sleep quality and what your experience has been, because the real-world sleep strategies of the adults watching this video are something I genuinely want to understand. Magnesium is the second specific nutrient in peanut butter that is directly relevant to overnight physiology. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter provide approximately 49 milligrams of magnesium, approximately 12% of the recommended daily intake for adults over 50, alongside whatever magnesium has been consumed through the rest of the day. Magnesium is required for more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body and has 3 specific roles in overnight sleep physiology. First, it is the physiological calcium channel antagonist in the nervous system. The calming, quietening effect of adequate magnesium on neural excitability is mediated through its competition with calcium at NMDA receptors in the brain, reducing the excitatory neural transmission that opposes sleep onset. Second, magnesium is required for the synthesis of the neurotransmitter GABA, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter of the central nervous system, whose activation is the mechanism by which all benzodiazepine and Z-drug sleep medications work. Adequate magnesium supports endogenous GABA production without the dependence and rebound insomnia of pharmaceutical GABA activation. Third, magnesium directly regulates the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal stress response system, reducing the sensitivity of the adrenal cortex to ACTH stimulation, and thereby reducing the cortisol output for a given level of physiological stress. Adults over 50 are frequently magnesium deficient, as we have discussed in multiple previous videos on this channel, through the combined effects of reduced dietary intake, diuretic use, and the reduced intestinal absorption that accompanies aging. Given that cortisol excess in the overnight period is one of the primary mechanisms of sleep disruption in this age group, the magnesium in peanut butter contributes specifically to the stress hormone management dimension of overnight sleep quality. And share this video right now with one person in your life over 50 who wakes consistently in the small hours without an obvious reason, and who has never been told about the cortisol-glucose-sleep connection that peanut butter's macronutrient and magnesium profile specifically addresses. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, tap that button now and ring the bell. The tryptophan content of peanut butter adds a third mechanism, though it requires specific context to understand correctly. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter contain approximately 70 milligrams of tryptophan, the essential amino acid that is the precursor to serotonin, which is itself the precursor to melatonin. The popular understanding of this pathway, that consuming tryptophan-rich foods before bed increases melatonin and improves sleep, is partly true and partly oversimplified. Tryptophan is transported into the brain through a shared transport system that it competes with other large neutral amino acids for: valine, leucine, isoleucine, phenylalanine, and tyrosine. All use the same transporter, and the relative concentration of tryptophan to these competing amino acids determines how much tryptophan reaches the brain. Consuming tryptophan as part of a high-protein meal actually reduces its brain entry because the competing amino acids are simultaneously elevated. The specific way to maximize tryptophan's conversion to serotonin and melatonin is to consume a small amount of carbohydrate alongside the tryptophan-containing food. The insulin response to the carbohydrate drives the competing amino acids into muscle tissue, reducing their blood concentration and improving the ratio of tryptophan to competing amino acids at the blood-brain transport. This is why peanut butter on a small piece of whole grain bread or crackers is specifically better for the tryptophan pathway than peanut butter alone. The modest carbohydrate from the bread or crackers creates the insulin response that clears the competing amino acids and allows tryptophan preferential brain entry. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, tap that subscribe button now and ring the bell. The quality and composition of the peanut butter matters specifically, and the difference between natural peanut butter and many commercial varieties is significant for the purposes I have described. Natural peanut butter contains two ingredients, peanuts and salt. The fat it contains is the peanut's natural monounsaturated and polyunsaturated oil, which does not raise LDL cholesterol in the way that the partially hydrogenated vegetable oils used in some commercial varieties do. The carbohydrate content is minimal and comes from the peanut itself rather than from added sugars. Commercial peanut butter varieties commonly contain hydrogenated vegetable oil, added to prevent the natural oil separation that occurs in natural peanut butter, and palm oil used for the same purpose. Both of these additions increase the saturated fat content of the product. Many commercial varieties also contain added sugar in amounts from 2 to 4 grams per serving, which changes the glycemic response meaningfully. The added sugar component produces an insulin response that is followed by a reactive glucose dip in the small hours, potentially worsening rather than improving the overnight glucose stability that natural peanut butter addresses. The label to look for is peanuts and salt with nothing else. The oil separation that natural peanut butter undergoes is a sign of quality rather than a defect, and storing it upside down in the refrigerator after mixing reduces the separation between uses. The portion and timing also require specific guidance. 2 tablespoons, approximately 32 grams, is the amount that provides the protein. Fat, magnesium, and tryptophan at doses relevant to the mechanisms I described, without producing a caloric load large enough to meaningfully affect body composition. In the context of an otherwise appropriate dietary pattern, consuming it 30 to 60 minutes before the intended sleep time allows enough time for gastric emptying to begin and for the amino acids to begin entering circulation before sleep onset, but not so far in advance that the benefit has passed. Adults with acid reflux disease should note that any food consumed close to bed can worsen nighttime reflux, and the high fat content of peanut butter specifically relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter at high doses. The small 2 tablespoon serving is generally tolerable, even in adults with mild reflux, when consumed at least 30 to 45 minutes before lying down. But those with significant nighttime reflux should discuss the timing with a healthcare provider. Here is the complete practical protocol for the bedtime peanut butter strategy. 30 to 60 minutes before intended sleep time, consume 2 tablespoons of natural peanut butter, ingredients peanuts and salt only, on 1 or 2 small whole grain crackers or a small slice of whole grain bread. The combination of the protein and fat from the peanut butter with the small carbohydrate from the crackers provides the blood glucose floor maintenance, the overnight amino acid supply for muscle protein synthesis, the magnesium for cortisol and GABA support, and the tryptophan with the insulin-mediated competing amino acid clearance that maximizes its brain entry. Avoid combining it with juice, sweetened drinks, or high-sugar accompaniments that would negate the low glycemic benefit. You avoid the full meal-sized portion that would create a digestive burden disrupting sleep onset. And select natural peanut butter specifically, rather than commercial varieties with hydrogenated oil and added sugar. For adults who specifically want to add magnesium beyond what the peanut butter provides, magnesium glycinate at 200 to 400 milligrams taken 30 to 60 minutes before sleep is the most bioavailable and most sleep-relevant form, as glycinate is the most absorbable and least laxative magnesium form, and its GABA supportive properties specifically complement the tryptophan pathway of the peanut butter. 4 things to carry away. First, overnight blood glucose instability in adults over 50 with insulin resistance produces cortisol and adrenaline releases in the mid-sleep period that lighten sleep and can produce the 2 to 4 in the morning waking that many people attribute to aging rather than to a correctable metabolic mechanism. A low glycemic bedtime snack specifically addresses the overnight glucose floor that prevents the stress hormone trigger. Second, peanut butter consumed before bed provides protein that extends overnight essential amino acid availability for the muscle protein synthesis that growth hormone drives during the first 90 minutes of sleep, a mechanism whose importance increases with age as both growth hormone secretion and muscle protein synthesis efficiency decline. Third, the magnesium in natural peanut butter contributes to cortisol regulation, GABA synthesis, and neural calming through the calcium antagonism mechanism, addressing 3 of the 4 primary physiological mechanisms that disrupt sleep quality in adults over 50. Fourth, the combination with a small whole-grain carbohydrate specifically maximizes the tryptophan pathway to melatonin by using the insulin response to clear competing amino acids from the blood-brain transport system. Peanut butter alone is less effective for this mechanism than peanut butter with a small amount of complex carbohydrate. Share this video with one person in your life over 50 who wakes at the same time most nights and cannot explain why, because the glucose-cortisol sleep connection I have described is the explanation that standard sleep advice most consistently misses. And subscribe to this channel because every week I come here with one purpose: to give you the specific information that connects what seems like an unexplained symptom to the biology that is producing it. Aging does not take away your body's ability to recover. It simply reminds you to care for it the right way. Take care of yourself.